They say silence speaks louder than words, but nothing cuts deeper than being deliberately ignored, especially when you've poured your whole self into something and the only response is a quiet dismissal masked behind polite smiles and redirected conversations. I didn't expect a standing ovation, but after 9 years of carrying the company's most profitable client on my shoulders, I thought my salary proposal deserved at the very least a response. My stomach twists as I say this to my reflection in the car window. My name is Eleanor Harmon. I'm 46 years old, a senior strategist at a mid-sized marketing agency in Chicago. Or at least I was. For nearly a decade, I managed Innovatech, a tech powerhouse responsible for over a third of our agency's revenue. I didn't just handle their business, I lived and breathed their challenges. I transformed their chaos into coherent strategy, their half-formed ideas into market-ready launches. My role wasn't just meeting deliverables, it was preventing disasters before anyone else even sensed trouble brewing. But 8 months ago, everything began to shift. Quietly at first, almost imperceptibly. It started when Victor was appointed as the new CEO. At 42, sharp-suited and disturbingly efficiency-focused, he made his vision crystal clear in his first company-wide LinkedIn post: "Loyalty is not a business model. Optimization is our path forward." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. This wasn't going to end well. Still, I kept my head down and continued what I'd always done: over-deliver. In Q1 alone, I exceeded our retention goals by 183%. I negotiated a 7-figure renewal with Innovatech without external legal support, and mentored 2 junior strategists who eventually got promoted. All while juggling video calls with my daughter Juliet during her freshman year at college. So when I sent Victor a detailed email with a formal proposal to adjust my salary, I believed it was more than justified. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't demanding. It was backed by hard performance metrics and comparative data from our competitors. I hit send, took a deep breath, and waited, hoping this would help secure Julia's next semester tuition. 1 week passed, then 2. The email remained unread in his inbox. Initially, I assumed he was overwhelmed. A new CEO has countless priorities. But during a weekly team sync, his protégé Paige, an ambitious 28-year-old with perfectly curated social media profiles, casually remarked, "Oh, Victor mentioned those types of emails aren't on his priority list right now." I smiled politely, nodded, but my chest tightened with a flash of hurt and anger. Still, I followed up. I even offered to discuss it casually over coffee or during a team lunch. No reply. Not a "let's circle back later." Not even a flat rejection. Just digital silence. And here's the truth: it wasn't about the money. It was about being seen, being acknowledged, hearing someone say, "We recognize your contribution." Instead, I was becoming a ghost in my own professional story while trying to maintain a brave face for my daughter. Then one Thursday morning, I clicked on a client meeting invitation to discover I hadn't been included in the original email thread. When I arrived at the conference room, Paige was sitting in my usual seat, her designer blazer draped perfectly over the chair. Victor gestured for me to sit 2 places down. "Paige is taking lead on this one," he said with a practiced smile. Fresh perspective. I forced a light laugh, because what other response was there? But that moment hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't just being overlooked, I was being systematically replaced. Silently. Strategically. I left that meeting clutching 2 things: my tablet and the first spark of determination. I didn't storm out dramatically. I didn't raise my voice or demand recognition. That's not who I am. Instead, I observed everything. Watched as Paige stumbled through the presentation, using slides I had originally created for her during her onboarding. Noticed Victor nodding with exaggerated encouragement, as if her basic insights were revolutionary breakthroughs. Saw colleagues glance my way not with sympathy or disdain, but with that uncomfortable avoidance, the kind reserved for someone whose professional fate they feared might be contagious. That's when reality crystallized. They already knew what was happening. The whispers in the break room, the subtle shift in responsibilities, the "Eleanor will provide background support" notes in project management threads. It had been happening so gradually that I hadn't recognized the pattern of betrayal until I was already being erased. But I wasn't defeated. Not by a long shot. I stayed after hours that evening, not because of deadlines, but because I needed space to think. At 7:42 p.m., the office was nearly empty. I sat at my desk, opened my inbox, and reread the salary proposal I had sent 8 months earlier. Still unread. The subject line glared back at me like an accusation: performance-based compensation review, Q1 request. My fingers hovered over the email, not to delete it, but to remind myself I wasn't imagining things. I had done everything by the book. I had delivered exceptional results, documented every success, even structured my proposal around company-wide KPIs. But what I hadn't done, what Victor clearly resented, was play the social media popularity game. And I was paying the price while my daughter counted on me. Over the next few weeks, the changes became increasingly blatant. Westlake Imports, a key client I had personally nurtured for 4 years, was suddenly reassigned to Paige. No discussion, no courtesy warning, just a calendar notification that appeared in my inbox with her name highlighted as the new lead contact. I felt my heart pounding against my ribs as I approached Victor's glass-walled office. Keeping my voice steady, I asked, was there a reason I wasn't consulted about the Westlake account transfer? He smiled without looking up from his phone. We're building Paige's portfolio. She needs substantial accounts to develop her skills. I'm sure you understand the importance of mentoring the next generation. My throat tightened. I do understand mentorship. I just hope the client understands why their account manager changed overnight. He chuckled dismissively. They'll adapt. It's simply resource optimization. But I knew better. This wasn't about optimization. It was a calculated erasure, one task, one client, one digital thread at a time. That evening, I sat in my car in the deserted parking garage, tears streaming down my face. I wasn't crying out of weakness, but because I needed an outlet that wasn't a Slack channel or a conference room. My fingers trembled as I texted Julia to check if she'd received this month's tuition payment. It wasn't just the professional humiliation, it was the message beneath it: you are replaceable despite your decades of commitment. Yet the next morning, I walked through those office doors with my head high, because something deep within refused to let Victor write the final chapter of my story. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of watching me quit in defeat. If he wanted me gone, he would need to say it directly to my face. And if he lacked that courage, I would leverage every bit of my experience to demonstrate what genuine strategic thinking looks like under pressure. This had evolved beyond a salary adjustment. It was about dignity. About reclaiming my professional voice, methodically gathering evidence, and waiting for the perfect moment to speak with such clarity that Victor would have no choice but to acknowledge me. And remarkably, that opportunity arrived sooner than I anticipated. The day began like any other Tuesday, gray skies visible through the office windows, lukewarm coffee in my favorite mug, and another generic meeting agenda waiting in my cluttered inbox. I expected nothing special, just another parade of buzzwords, dashboards with colorful charts, and Victor pretending to inspire employees whose names he barely remembered. But one line in the meeting invitation caught my attention: company-wide Q3 strategy alignment, all strategic team leads required. Except according to the company's updated org chart on the intranet, I wasn't officially listed as a team lead anymore. Still, I joined the video call. Of course I did. I wore my structured navy blazer, the one that always bolstered my confidence, and entered the conference room with my tablet, a small notebook, and enough professional pride to keep my shoulders back. The room hummed with subdued conversation. Paige sat prominently at Victor's left, practically glowing with self-importance, designer outfit, freshly styled hair, new statement jewelry, like someone who'd just been promised the keys to the kingdom. I took a seat in the second row, feeling the subtle shift in energy as I settled in. Nobody said anything directly, but I felt the uncomfortable glances, that unmistakable awkwardness people display when they believe you shouldn't be in a room anymore. Victor launched the meeting with his characteristic inspirational monologue, terms like agile methodology, cross-functional synergy, and operational velocity filled his slides like empty calories. Then, about 15 minutes in, his tone noticeably changed. "We're entering a transformational phase," he announced, clicking to a slide boldly labeled Strategic Talent Optimization. "It's time to critically evaluate where we invest our resources and human capital." He scanned the room, pausing dramatically. "This sometimes requires difficult decisions. Certain team members have been with us for many years, and while they may have contributed significantly in the past, longevity doesn't guarantee alignment with our future vision." My body went rigid. Though no names were explicitly mentioned, his intent was crystal clear. His gaze lingered on me a moment too long before he continued. "If anyone feels entitled to compensation increases merely because they've accumulated years of service without embracing our company's digital transformation, perhaps they should reflect on whether this environment still matches their professional goals." The room fell into uncomfortable silence. I felt the weight of every glance shifting toward me, some fleeting, others lingering uncomfortably. Paige adjusted her position with a barely perceptible smirk while updating something on her tablet. "And Victor?" He simply advanced to the next slide as if he hadn't just publicly undermined my entire career. It was beyond excessive. It was cruel and unprofessional. I sat motionless, containing every surge of humiliation, rage, and disbelief that threatened to overwhelm me. How dare he? After countless crisis interventions with clients, after innumerable late nights working while juggling single motherhood, after years of quietly absorbing setbacks to protect the company's reputation, this was my reward? My face burned hot, my vision momentarily blurred, but I remained composed. I stayed through the entire meeting, taking detailed notes as if nothing unusual had occurred, and exited with the same professional demeanor I'd entered with. But internally, I had reached my breaking point. No more follow-up emails. No more gentle reminders. No more pleading to be acknowledged. Victor clearly wanted me gone without the messiness of termination. He hoped to diminish me until I resigned voluntarily, sparing him both severance costs and accountability. Fine. If departure was inevitable, I would leave entirely on my own terms. And I would ensure my exit carried significant impact. That night I didn't cry. I didn't vent to a friend or rage scroll through LinkedIn job postings. Instead, my analytical side took over. I researched meticulously. I reviewed archived client contracts from my cloud backup, studied legal clauses, and traced the intricate web of professional relationships I'd cultivated over the years, especially with Innovatech. My fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard as I pulled up every email thread, every milestone presentation, every thank you message that had ever come from their executive team. The blue light from my screen illuminated my face as I worked through spreadsheets of performance metrics in my home office, occasionally glancing at the photo of Julia on my desk for motivation. Around 2:14 a.m., as my eyes burned from exhaustion, I found something I hadn't even realized I was searching for, a LinkedIn message from 8 months ago from Innovateca's Executive VP of Strategy, Camila Rodriguez, followed by an email. The message ended with, "Eleanor, if you ever feel your current agency no longer values your exceptional talent, reach out to me directly. We would be fortunate to have someone with your strategic insight on our team." My heart raced so fast I had to set my laptop aside. My hands trembled as the realization washed over me. It felt like discovering a lifeline in the middle of a stormy sea I hadn't fully acknowledged I was drowning in. Not only was I not forgotten or obsolete, someone genuinely recognized my value. Truly saw me. And not just anyone, Innovatech themselves. I didn't respond immediately. This wasn't about impulsive decisions. I needed to think strategically. I needed to calculate my next move carefully. But the determination burning inside me had transformed. This was no longer about escaping humiliation or seeking validation. This was about orchestrating a precise exit. Deliberately. Strategically. And ensuring that when I walked away, it wouldn't just be me leaving the agency, it would be the lifeblood of their biggest revenue source following right behind me. For 3 days, I analyzed tuition spreadsheets for Julia's upcoming semester and considered what this potential change would mean for both our futures. I wasn't rushing to respond to Camila's message, not because I lacked interest, but because I wanted my approach to be calculated. I wasn't seeking a rescue. I was establishing leverage. On the third evening, after FaceTiming with Julia about her midterm results, I sat at my kitchen island, hands slightly unsteady with anticipation, and composed my response. "Hi Camila, your message resonates more deeply than you might imagine. I'm open to a conversation, completely informal at this stage. Please let me know a convenient time for you. Eleanor." I pressed send, leaned back against my kitchen counter, and released a breath so profound it felt like expelling 8 months of suppressed frustration and unacknowledged value. Surprisingly, her response appeared within 20 minutes. "Tomorrow at 11 a.m. works perfectly. I'll send a Zoom link. Looking forward to reconnecting." That quickly? My heart skipped. Nervous energy coursed through me, but alongside it came a profound sense of validation. Perhaps I hadn't become invisible after all. The next morning, I connected to the call 5 minutes early from my home office, having arranged to work remotely that day. I wore a soft gray blouse that complemented my eyes and maintained a composed, measured smile, the kind that communicates I'm present and engaged, but also firmly in control of my professional destiny. Camila appeared on screen, her warm directness immediately apparent even through the digital interface. Her office backdrop looked sophisticated yet welcoming. "Still keeping everyone aligned over there?" she asked with a knowing half-smile. I returned her smile, feeling an unexpected ease. "It's been quite the journey lately." She nodded perceptively, not pressing for details. Instead, she offered something remarkably straightforward. "Let me be direct, Eleanor. Innovatech has been reviewing its agency partnerships extensively. We've observed a noticeable decline in consistency and strategic depth, and honestly, we missed the seamless integration we experienced when you were leading our account." My breath caught in my throat. Was this conversation actually happening? "We're actively considering internalizing portions of our strategic operations," she continued, her eyes reflecting genuine respect. "If you're interested in exploring a leadership role with us in-house, with flexibility for remote work, I believe we could offer you the professional environment and recognition you absolutely deserve. We value experience and results over performative visibility." It seemed almost too perfect to be real, this validation of everything I'd been questioning about myself. But looking at Camila's sincere expression, I knew this opportunity was genuine. I didn't immediately accept. I asked thoughtful questions about the role, the team structure, flexibility options that would allow me to be present for Julia's important moments. I negotiated respectfully but confidently. Yet deep in my heart, I already recognized I was stepping through this doorway. Not desperately running. Not fearfully fleeing. Walking forward with purpose and renewed confidence. Later that afternoon, I sat in my parked car outside my favorite organic grocery store, gripping the steering wheel, completely stunned. My heart fluttered with a mixture of disbelief and vindication. Was this what it felt like to be truly seen again? The sensation felt so foreign I barely recognized it. The next steps emerged naturally, like muscle memory from my strategic planning background. That evening, after preparing Julia's favorite pasta recipe, I systematically organized digital records, email exchanges, campaign analytics, and project archives, everything demonstrating the direct correlation between my strategic leadership and Innovatech's substantial growth. I wasn't taking anything proprietary or violating any agreements. I was simply compiling evidence of my own contributions to present the complete picture from my perspective. Meanwhile, the agency's situation deteriorated almost imperceptibly to those not paying attention. Westlake Imports had gone unusually quiet in the project management threads. Horizon Group, another significant account, formally requested a complete Q4 strategy overhaul after what they diplomatically called recent internal inconsistencies. Victor, predictably, attributed everything to market volatility in the company-wide Slack channel. But I understood the real dynamics at play. Then the bombshell dropped. Innovatech was terminating their contract. No preliminary discussion. No warning period. Just a formal, coldly professional email from their procurement department that landed in everyone's inbox simultaneously. The office erupted into chaos. Paige was summoned into back-to-back emergency meetings, her Instagram suddenly quiet. Victor was observed pacing the corridor outside the conference room, his composed facade cracking with reddened eyes and visibly clenched jaw. And me? I sat at my workstation, calmly responding to other client emails, my lips pressed into a line that only I recognized as a smile. The satisfaction was almost overwhelming. The poetic justice, too perfect. They had absolutely no comprehension of what was coming next. The Monday following Innovatech's contract termination was eerily silent in all the wrong ways. No urgent strategy sessions. No manufactured optimism in company communications. Just a thick, anxious tension permeating the office like a dense fog refusing to dissipate. Colleagues moved through hallways with unusual slowness. Whispered conversations replaced normal greetings in the break room. Victor abandoned his typical morning rounds with his signature latte and practiced smile. He remained sequestered in his glass-walled office like someone awaiting inevitable bad news. The loss wasn't merely financial, it was profoundly symbolic. Innovatech represented our crown jewel, our foundation client. Without them, the entire agency structure trembled. But while collective panic spread through the office in slow motion, I experienced an unexpected sense of tranquility. Perhaps because I'd finally stopped seeking external validation of my professional worth. Or perhaps because, for the first time in many months, I held the decisive advantage. That afternoon, my cell phone vibrated with an incoming call, not from Camila this time, but from Daniel Pierce, Innovatech's chief operating officer himself. He spoke with characteristic directness. "Eleanor, we've finalized the leadership structure for our new strategic client innovation division," he stated without preamble. "And the executive team's decision was unanimous. We want you to lead it." My breath caught as I gripped the phone tighter. "You'll build the department entirely from the ground up. Select your own team members. Complete authority over strategic direction. Reporting directly to our executive leadership. Flexible remote working options to accommodate your family needs. And naturally, compensation that genuinely reflects your expertise and contribution." My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't just another position, it represented a complete professional reset. A resounding vote of confidence that overshadowed every moment Victor had ever attempted to diminish my value. When the call concluded, I remained motionless at my desk, laptop still open before me, the subdued conversations of colleagues barely registering in my consciousness. This opportunity seemed almost too perfect to be real. But no, it wasn't too good to be true. It was simply long overdue recognition. I composed my acceptance email that evening after discussing the opportunity with Julia during our nightly video call, concise, professional, yet infused with quiet confidence that radiated from every carefully chosen word. The next morning, right on schedule, Victor emerged from his office sanctuary. His trademark confidence had vanished completely. He looked visibly strained, expensive tie slightly crooked, smile unnaturally tight, designer stubble less intentional and more neglected. A man desperately trying to hold a crumbling empire together with sheer willpower. He approached my desk with forced casualness. "Eleanor, do you have a moment to chat?" I followed him to the glass-walled conference room, noting the curious glances from colleagues as we passed. He closed the door and turned toward me slowly, clearly selecting his words with calculated precision. "So, Innovatech. Do you have any insight into why they terminated their contract so abruptly?" I met his gaze directly, feeling a surprising calm wash over me. I imagine it wasn't due to the weather forecast. He attempted a laugh that came out hollow and strained. "Come on, Eleanor. This is serious, we're talking about a third of our revenue." "I'm not currently part of their executive decision-making team," I replied evenly, emphasizing the word currently. "Not yet." His eyes widened with sudden realization. "So they have approached you?" I maintained my composure, saying nothing. My silence spoke volumes. He exhaled sharply, pacing to the window and back. Look, I recognize things became somewhat strained recently. I was implementing a more agile organizational model, bringing in digital native talent. Perhaps I overlooked certain valuable relationships in the process. He leaned forward slightly. But if you have any insights or suggestions for re-engaging with Innovatech, I would genuinely value your input. The board is breathing down my neck. The audacity was breathtaking. After months of systematic exclusion, silent erasure from meetings, and public humiliation, now he wanted to leverage my expertise? I tilted my head slightly. 8 months ago, I submitted a comprehensive proposal detailing exactly what Innovatech needed to feel valued and properly supported. According to my email tracking, you never even opened it. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing visibly. You also reassigned my long-standing accounts without consultation, systematically undermined my strategic role, and publicly promoted someone with minimal relevant experience to replace me. Someone whose primary qualification appears to be her social media presence. I miscalculated the situation, he admitted, his polished veneer cracking. We both recognize you were integral to that client relationship. I stood up slowly, straightening my blazer. Not were. Am. He blinked rapidly, processing my present tense. I've accepted a leadership position with Innovatech, I stated with quiet confidence. I'll be building their new strategic client innovation division, effective immediately. The role includes remote work flexibility, which will be wonderful for balancing my daughter's college schedule. Victor's complexion paled visibly. You're actually serious about this? Completely serious. The contract is already signed. A heavy silence stretched between us. His hands clenched at his sides, knuckles whitening. You're making a career-ending mistake. You've been in agencies too long to succeed client-side. No, I replied, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. You made the mistake when you chose to devalue 2 decades of experience and client relationships because they didn't fit your narrative. With that, I walked out. Not just from the conference room. From the building. From an entire chapter of my professional life. As I passed through the glass doors for the final time, the receptionist glanced up with confusion. Heading out for lunch already, Eleanor? I smiled genuinely for the first time in months. Something like that. Because I wasn't simply leaving. I was ascending to something better. And behind me, the ripple effects were only beginning to spread. I didn't bother clearing out my workstation. There wasn't much personal property remaining anyway. Throughout the past several months, my workspace had been gradually stripped of individuality, initially through subtle exclusion, later by deliberate design. No framed photo of Julia's graduation. No handwritten thank you notes from clients. No certificates of achievement. It was as if my professional identity had already been systematically erased long before I submitted my resignation. Still, I paused briefly before departing. I scanned the open office layout one final time, absorbing the familiar sounds of printers humming, keyboards clicking, and the palpable tension hanging in the air like an electrical charge. Nobody realized I was walking away permanently, and I preferred it that way. I didn't want forced applause or awkward expressions of pity. I had no interest in a hastily organized farewell gathering in the break room with supermarket cake and a generic card signed by colleagues who had strategically avoided eye contact with me for months. I wanted my departure to mirror the silent treatment that had characterized my recent experience. I pressed the elevator call button and waited, my leather tote bag containing only my tablet and personal items. As the doors slid open, I heard someone calling my name. It was Paige. Eleanor? I turned unhurriedly. She approached, her confident stride faltering slightly. Are you leaving for the day? There was an unmistakable flicker of something in her voice, not exactly guilt or remorse, but uncertainty, as if she suddenly recognized that her position might not be as secure as she'd assumed. I'm leaving permanently, I replied calmly, without emotion. Her carefully mascaraed eyes widened. So the rumors are true? You're joining Innovateca's leadership team? I neither confirmed nor denied. The internal communications grapevine had clearly already circulated the information. She shifted her weight awkwardly, designer heels clicking against the marble floor. Well, good luck. You actually deserve it. She hesitated before adding, I learned so much from your strategy documents. Her unexpected acknowledgement surprised me, not because I needed her validation, but because I never anticipated she possessed the self-awareness to recognize what she'd been doing. Thank you, Paige, I replied simply. Then I stepped into the waiting elevator and allowed the doors to close on everything I had tolerated for far too long. As I walked through the parking garage toward my car, the air felt noticeably different. Lighter. Crisper. More invigorating. I hadn't fully comprehended just how much emotional weight I'd been carrying until it suddenly lifted from my shoulders. No more pleading to be noticed. No more performing for executives who had already determined my fate. No more diminishing my expertise to accommodate someone else's fragile ego. I drove home in complete silence, no podcast, no news, just the gentle rhythm of tires against asphalt and the steady cadence of my own thoughts. My mind was already racing with possibilities for building my new team. When I arrived at my comfortable home in Chicago's northern suburbs, I poured a glass of my favorite Cabernet, settled at my kitchen island, and opened my laptop. With a deep breath, I logged into my new corporate account, eleanor.harmon@innovatech.com. What an extraordinary moment of transition. There it was, a fresh professional beginning. A clean slate identity. And this time, one that couldn't be manipulated by someone else's self-serving narrative. The welcome message waited at the top of my inbox. We're thrilled to welcome you to the Innovatech family. Let's build something truly exceptional together. Your home office equipment will arrive tomorrow. I leaned back in my chair, surprised to feel my eyes growing moist, not from disappointment or frustration, but from something profoundly unfamiliar after these difficult months. Genuine joy. Pure, unadulterated happiness. Because for the first time in far too long, I wasn't merely surviving day to day. I was truly beginning anew. And most importantly, entirely on my own terms, with both my professional dignity and family priorities intact. I knew with absolute certainty that the story hadn't reached its conclusion. Victor would soon discover exactly how profound my influence had been throughout the client ecosystem. The ripple effects hadn't ended with Innovatech. Other clients were beginning to raise uncomfortable questions. Several had already reached out to me directly through LinkedIn. And the agency I departed? They were about to experience the full consequences of every calculated decision they made to silence and diminish me. 3 weeks into establishing my new division, I received an unexpected video call request. It was from Nathan Harris, the CMO at Horizon Group, a client I had once guided through a potentially catastrophic product launch crisis that could have devastated their market position. Eleanor, he began warmly. Word is spreading about your new leadership role. Congratulations are definitely in order. Candidly, we're seriously considering following Innovateca's example and reevaluating our agency relationship. I smiled gently, immediately understanding his subtle message. They weren't making a courtesy call. They were following the quality of work. Following strategic excellence. Following me. Within the span of a week, 2 additional long-standing clients had initiated contact. Not with accusations or complaints about my departure, but with genuine interest. Where had I gone? Would I consider taking on strategic consulting work? Could we schedule a conversation? I didn't make impulsive commitments. I simply listened attentively. And with each conversation, I recognized it more clearly. The professional legacy Victor had attempted to erase remained vibrantly alive, valued by those who truly mattered. Meanwhile, through industry connections, I'd learned that conditions at my former agency had deteriorated rapidly. Multiple clients were withdrawing from previously confirmed Q4 initiatives. New business presentations were consistently falling flat. Internal staff departures had quietly but dramatically increased. Paige had been reassigned to an internal role with minimal client contact. And Victor? His previously hyperactive LinkedIn presence had gone conspicuously silent. There was a certain poetic justice to it all. I took no pleasure in their struggles. Gloating isn't part of my character. But I did reflect deeply on the situation. Because here's the uncomfortable truth many leaders fail to acknowledge: when you treat experienced professionals as disposable assets, you inadvertently teach them to develop strategic exit plans. And when you push the wrong person, someone who quietly holds together critical client relationships, beyond their threshold, you don't merely lose that individual. You lose everything they protected without your awareness or appreciation. I don't claim perfection. I made my share of mistakes. I remained in a toxic environment longer than was healthy. I tolerated disrespect beyond reasonable limits. But ultimately, I departed with my professional integrity intact and an exciting new chapter already unfolding, one that included both career advancement and the flexibility to support Julia through her college journey. I once believed power stemmed primarily from titles and organizational hierarchy. Now I understand it emerges from something far more foundational and profound: recognizing your inherent value, maintaining your boundaries, and having the courage to walk away when circumstances demand it. Have you ever experienced being overlooked, systematically dismissed, or made to feel your loyalty and contributions were meaningless? Please know you're not alone, and you're not without options. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is to maintain your dignity, continue delivering excellence, and let your eventual departure communicate what words never could. While tending to my urban vegetable garden the following weekend, Julia helping me harvest tomatoes during her weekend visit home from college, I realized something profound. In nurturing these plants from tiny seedlings to abundant producers, I'd been patient, consistent, and attentive to their needs. I'd given them everything required to thrive. And now I was finally doing the same for myself, creating an environment where both my career and my personal life could flourish together. As Julia laughed, holding up an enormous heirloom tomato, I knew with absolute certainty that I hadn't just survived, I had evolved into precisely who I was meant to become all along.